All right, let's go ahead and call the January 8th school board meeting to order. Let's all please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, gentlemen, looking for approval of the agenda.
I'll approve the agenda.
Or I move to approve.
Move to approve the agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Comments from the public?
Mr. Chairman, we had 3 comments from the public submitted today in writing. We had commenter make 2 points, request a change in middle school grading policy related to no zero grading policy. The second commenter made 3 points, stated he was denied access to present a video tonight at the listening session. He had shared the video with each of us, shared information from the video related to transgenderism, stated concern about understanding methods and policies of how GAPS deals with gender expansive students. The third public commenter made 1 point, requested change in the middle school grading policy, removing the 50% minimum grade. Those are the 3 submitted written public comments to tonight's meeting. We had held a listening session, 5 o'clock here tonight. We had 3 commenters. The first one was several questions about fundraising. Staff have how to access buildings. Wanted clarification on reporting incidents, particularly that involve injuries, and asked that the board consider moving to regular public comments. Second commenter, again, reflected, also submitted the written public comment about transgenderism. He again made the statements that this was not a substantive issue, and in fact was a somewhat created issue. Second one was a comment on the grading policy at the middle school. He asked, why haven't we just done something? Finally, he said that at the last board meeting, the Director of Equity and Inclusion had spoken about that there were no consequences, or that is not a part of the discussion. Just as a matter of follow-up, I have listened to the trainer for restorative practices speak 3 times. I have always heard him say that they are included. I believe that we are including them now. Finally, the third speaker tonight at the listening session was a student asked about getting Algebra 1 credit at the 8th grade level. If she took the course and passed a test, could she have a credit at the middle school that would count at the high school? That's it.
Did you have any other reports beyond that, Andy? Superintendent reports?
I think it's board business and then.
Oh, yeah. Well, is there any board business? We have board member comments later, but anybody have any specific board business?
I didn't know, following up on that listening session.
Okay,
We
go
only
ahead.
had 3 people. I only had 3 when I did mine. Is it still the best forum? Is that still the best use of time? I mean, I like what we're trying to do, but if we're not getting it done.
Well, I guess that's good news in some respects,
Right.
is that we're dealing with most of the issues that the public is interested in. Perhaps we could shorten the time frame. I still like the format, and I still personally would like to be involved and give people the opportunity to come in and speak with them, because at our board meetings like this, we really can't get a question and answer session going.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, my concern is just if it's.
Sure, I don't want to waste the board's time, I get it, yeah, and I'd be very willing to look at maybe a shortened time frame, maybe go to 5:30 to 6:30, until such time as we see some need to go a little bit longer, give people a chance after work sort of thing. So maybe we can discuss that.
At the agenda meeting?
Yeah, we could, at the agenda meeting, we can talk about that and maybe bring it forward for a vote. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay. Anything else? All right, let's go to superintendent comments.
So first and foremost, this is Board Appreciation Month, and I think there are some people who are going to be dropping things off we'll be sharing with you guys. But I want to thank you guys for your work on the board. It is not always a job where appreciation is rendered on frequent intervals. And so I want to thank you guys for the work that you do. And in the last week, it has not always been the most fun time. We had a notice of an employee who had engaged in theft in our district, and of course, you can read all about that in the papers. I think it's really important that we make a couple of comments, not necessarily specific to that, but we must remember that our schools are full of caring and dedicated professional staff who do their job and work really hard and put in a ton of hours for kids, and that this does not occur with all of them, except for one or two. And those people are on the job today with our kids. I think the other thing is when I've had a couple relatives who have had their house broken into, and it is an offense, and they feel like they have been taken advantage of or they have somehow diminished. And I know that that can occur, and that feeling can be present among kids or other adults, people who work in the fundraising aspects that support our schools. But the truth is that that does not define us, and that we are going to make sure that the district and the schools are worthy of the public trust. And so if they're, as we go down the road, if we find something that we can correct in our procedures, we will do that. But we must remember that sometimes people make mistakes, and that does not define all of us. It does not define South Albany High School. And we'll move forward from there. Our work as we go forward right now, and I know that there's going to be some questions about funding, but we are working right now to resolve and now kind of clean up the two bargainings that have occurred this last fall. And there is a lot of work, and I really appreciate the work Jane and Susie have done with both of the unions, and we'll get moving on that as we go forward. I know that there's an enrollment number that we're waiting to see here in January, and we're going to see what the rest of the state does. We'll begin to move into budget here in the next 3 weeks. One of the profound issues in the state and here as well is the safety, and I think that safety of the people who work here and behavior and its impact on instruction. Want to invite you guys to come and walk buildings with me just to see what that looks like day to day. But at the same time, I know we have to take some action there, and we're looking at different ways to construct our classrooms for the more severe incidents. And so we'll be sharing more with you on that as we get going. And finally, this coming week, we're going to be meeting with the Chamber, Lynn Benton Community College, and other entities to really start working on pipeline to jobs, some of the things that I think were done here several years ago, which have stopped happening. So we'll be going on that. That's all I have.
Okay, board member reports. Maybe want to go first?
Sure. I just want to say to those that came to the listening session, thank you for providing your time to give us some insight and some feedback. I don't know if this is technically business or a report, but I think the student that brought up the issue with getting the credits for taking high school classes, I think that is something we should look into. Just a matter of if the students are able to pass those classes, I feel like they should get the credit for that. And if that's something they're doing, I think they have earned that. So appreciate it, and I think that's something we should aim for.
What was the class?
Algebra.
There's a policy on that, I'm pretty sure.
There's a policy, we don't credit algebra 1 in 8th grade.
Yeah, right, but but it's in policy.
Geometry.
Right. But so, my point is it's in policy already, so it's already.
I move to change the policy.
Do we do that right now?
I don't think so, but I appreciate
Is there a
Roger's.
second to the motion?
I would second that.
I've sat on this discussion before, it's a fascinating discussion. Ms. Worsburn would be an excellent person to help lead it, but there's a lot of education involved. before
I
you
think
make a
there's
decision.
more to be answered.
Yeah.
I think we were barred in one school, and I told these guys that, because of the licensure of the teacher. And so we'll have to look into that, but certainly bears investigation.
Now, I believe you might have been in jest, but there is a motion, and it's been seconded. Did you withdraw the motion?
I want to hear the explanation again, why the governing body elected by the local community can't change board policy or district policy on this issue again? Is it state law?
Well, you could, but you can't do it now. You got to do a first reading, got to have a draft. We don't have, I'm not,
No,
I don't have anything to look at.
So we had looked into this in my old district and found that the certification of the teacher needed to be at the high school level, that the licensure gave them a certification at the high school level to give a high school credit. That was the only thing.
So that would be State Department of Ed administrative rule that we would need to ask them to change to allow us to do that? How do we get there from here is my question.
I think we need to just discover what the step would be, if that in fact is the case, and ask them to change that, yeah, as a part of the investigation.
I'll withdraw the motion,
If we come up with an answer.
if you withdraw the second, but look, back to the listening sessions and why we have them, and this is counter to the discussion we've had and the problem we've had in kids not being motivated at the middle school level, because we don't, and here you got one who's really motivated, and it's a fair question, and I don't know why we shouldn't do it, other than someone's telling us we can't.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. It's worthy of pursuit. I just don't think we can do it at this moment. Ryan, did you want to?
Just that there are, I didn't second it. There are reasons not to do it. I will tell you that.
No, I mean,
But I'm not
further
gonna go
board
into
member
it right
reports,
now.
but that's okay.
No, I don't have a report.
Okay, but it's your sport. Do you want to go?
No, I don't have anything to report on.
Roger, you want to go? You all done? Pete, anything?
Sure, I think the listening session was really good. We got to talk to some people. That was fantastic. I am obviously pushing to have middle school grades changed. There's some real reason to get on that quickly. I'd really rather not have it be a board vote, but I also, if that's what we need, I would be all for it. So I hope to at least have eighth graders have some kind of difference so that they're better prepared for ninth grade when they start ninth grade next year.
I didn't have anything, so let's go ahead and move to student board member reports. Hadley?
Okay, so Youth in Government just had their first bill deadline on the 5th, and this is because the pre-legislation conference is on the 13th. This is the first time in about 3 years that pre-leg will be in person, and it'll be at West Salem High School. Everyone is continuing to prepare for the conference in February. The Environmental Club is in the middle of planning tree planting this month and some other possible trash pickup. Model UN is preparing for WinterCon at the end of this month, which is practice for the actual conference in April. And I believe that this year, Model UN will be representing Yemen. Wrestling, there's quite a few tournaments, and I find them a little bit hard to track, but over winter break, there were a lot of team workouts and the Northwest duels at the fairgrounds. Basketball programs, varsity teams had a tournament in Lake Oswego from the 16th through 18th in December. The boys and girls played at Woodburn on the 2nd and home against Lebanon on the 5th. And tonight, teams are playing Central. Girls varsity is at 5:30 and boys at 7. Or girls varsity at 7, boys is also at 7 because they're away. And then the winter formal is on the 20th of this month, named the White Winter Masquerade, and it'll be in the Commons at $10 per ticket. Air guitar practices are in full swing with the upcoming performance in February, and seniors are starting to get notices that their senior portraits are due in a month for the yearbook, and students are also getting notices about the FAFSA being out and other scholarship opportunities.
Was there anything from South Albany tonight? Not that we're aware of? Okay. Mr. Gardner, would you please introduce our representative from South Shore Elementary for our school report?
Sure. It is my pleasure to introduce Marcy Beltran, the long-serving principal at South Shore Elementary. Board Member Taylor and I were honored to be able to go out and visit some of her classrooms and hear her explanations for her program. And it was very impressive, and she is here to share some insights into her school with you.
Good evening. At South Shore, our vision is that we are a dual language school where all students are inspired to reach their highest potential through bilingualism, biliteracy, and multiculturalism. Our demographics, we have 26 certified staff members. 16 of those are classroom teachers. We have 3 ELD teachers, as we have the largest ELD students within the elementary schools. We have a full-time PE music teacher, a resource teacher, a 0.6 speech pathologist, full-time counselor, an instructional coach, and this year we have a full-time dean of students. 14 of our certified staff members are BIPOC, making it 53% of our staff. 21 of our staff members are bilingual or emergent bilingual. We have 25 classified staff, 18 of them are BIPOC, 18 are also bilingual or emergent bilingual staff members. 62% of all of our staff members are of color, 76% are bilingual or emergent bilingual. So a lot of our staff are able to teach in both languages. We have 347 students, 48% of them are English language learners, 2% are TAG, 13% are SPED, this year we've had an increase of newcomers, and I do want to thank the board for that support in helping us be able to bus
and our students who have student disabilities. And I'll talk to you more about that as we go on. I think that we're super proud of is the community that we serve. The staff and the families are amazing. We are the only county school is a dual language
program. We like to see and think of our students all as language learners. This is our second year with our Spanish preschool program. One of the things that I'm super proud of is the fact that we support our classified staff in fulfilling their career goals. We have had 8 teachers, or we have 8 teachers in our staff who were previously classified staff members. 5 teachers who have worked as classroom teachers as they're completing their teaching program. So we're super proud of the fact that we support our classified staff in growing to change their career goals or attain their career goals. We're also super proud of the enrichment opportunities that we offer. We offer free orchestra classes to all of our 3rd and 5th grade students who are interested in that. This year is our first year offering ballet folklorico, And we had a huge number of students who were super interested in that. And honestly, we couldn't, we had to close the enrollment because there were so many students. And that serves our kinder through 5th grade.
creating the place option. I was super excited to do one of that. Our focus speakers, David has shown, as you saw in the previous slide and on this slide, that areas of our greatest need in improving our outcomes for our students and our students who are from Hispanic or identified as Hispanic, that belong in special ed. Barriers and challenges, some of the barriers that we have is our data, our tracking system with data. We don't have a data system that compares and tracks the proficiency levels of Spanish and English in order for us to determine their barriers to bilingualism. We are working on creating a system in which we can look at the data and be able to compare which students are proficient in both English and Spanish. But right now, what we have, you're only able to see whether they're proficient in either English or proficient in Spanish. We also do
Not having, which is a great need, a system that gives equivalent measures and information between the two languages. We need supports for our newcomer students who come to us with minimal to sometimes no previous schooling experience. And then, of course, classified stuff. Subs is always a challenge. Our goals, our school improvement goals. Our first one is in reading. Our goal is for our students to, who are identified as well below benchmark, to increase 10% as identified by our literacy composite data obtained through our MTSS system. We've dedicated PLC time to focus on planning for reading instruction. We've provided SEA support during small group instruction in grades kinder through 2nd grade. We've also dedicated time for 20% meetings to assess the progress the students are making and to adjust for interventions. And again, this is in both languages. And then we continue to ensure that we have fidelity within the curriculum and the interventions that we provide. And again, those interventions are in both Spanish and English. As you can see on these charts, the the phonics awareness, we are very strong in that area, and partially the reason for that is because we provide phonics instruction in both Spanish and English. And compared to other schools, we provide more time in those areas as kids are learning to learn the phonics in both languages and be able to translate from one language to the other, or transfer skills from one language to the other. This is our progress data, and what this shows is the need of the progress and the need to continue to provide that instruction throughout the grades. What I will show you is that, unfortunately, we're not able to see, because of the way the data is presented to us or the way we collect the data, we're not able to see what students are proficient in English and what students are proficient in Spanish. Though although these numbers are low, when we look at and compare the number of students who are proficient in English, it doesn't necessarily mean that, let me reword that. When we look at the Spanish, it could be that some of these students are proficient in Spanish and do not show as proficient in English, and vice versa. Some of the students who are proficient in English will not show whether they're proficient in Spanish. And so because we don't have a system that collects and compares both, our numbers should show higher than what it currently shows. Over a 3-year span, and our next goal is in math, over a 3-year span, 80% of our students will make at least one proficiency level of growth in their priority standards in math from September 23 to June of 2024. This goal is a goal that we've had for 3 years. And so the teachers really create benchmark assessments and deliver district-wide post-assessments to be able to track the growth that the students are making in math. Using that data to cycle the targets and adjust to meet instructional needs. We also dedicate, again, 20% meeting time to look at math and the growth that they're making to be able to adjust instruction in math review, during math review. And again, continue fidelity within the curriculum. This is our current math data. What this will show, again, fortunately this year we are able to identify students who need testing in Spanish versus English, and the testing that we, testing the students in the language that they're more comfortable with. The data that you're seeing right now is data that we received or that we collected in September. So as the students are going through benchmark data right now, I'm hoping to see a difference and a change in that and an improvement. Goal number 3 is professional development. Because we're a dual language school, our goal is to be able to provide students that opportunity to practice language throughout the day. And within that, the teachers are given opportunities in which they engage in professional development around QTEL strategies, which is quality interactions for English learners. And because we see language as a goal for all of our students, improving their language skills, this is a goal that benefits our school very well. So the goal is around providing opportunities in which 65% of our students can engage in the 3rd or 4th quadrant of the QTEL quality interaction rubric in order to increase sustained and reciprocal talk to construct new and rigorous understandings in English and in Spanish. And again, giving them, in order to meet that standard, that goal, we are giving them opportunities to plan with our instructional coach around this area. Again, to providing professional development for the continual growth in practice. And the data I'm presenting to you is how teachers are, how often are teachers providing opportunities for students to engage in QTEL tasks that practice their language development. The 4th goal is around, it's around the behavior. So by June of 2026, we will reduce our referral numbers by 15% as identified in SWIS data and increase problem-solving skills by refining our foundation systems and incorporating collaborative problem-solving practices. So we are providing a professional development for continual growth in the understanding of SEL, We are giving dedicated time for 20% meetings to assess students' progress and adjustment in SEL lessons. And we are running targeted SEL small groups with our counselor. And what you have here is data from last year that we collected compared to this year. And if you notice here, what we have is we were tracking how many students were visiting our focus room. And in that, you will see that in October, actually all of last year, we had a huge amount of number of students asking for or receiving breaks in our focus room. So they were getting green breaks, which is they've earned a break, and so they were getting a positive break in there. They would get a yellow break, a time to calm down or reset break, check-ins or check-outs, and or times where they were going in there for problem solving. At the beginning of this year, we provided professional development around that and restructured our focus room. And if you notice, there is a huge decrease in the number of referrals that we've had. And that's because teachers are doing part of the problem solving, helping students, giving them opportunities in different structures in the classroom to help them de-escalate and have less referrals. What people say about our school. So I'm going to read some of the parents. Peter, who's one of our parents, says that as a parent, I, along with my children, am building cross-cultural relationships through the school that I wouldn't otherwise. The teachers and staff have taken the time to get to know me as a parent and make me feel part of the school community. Helen says, le di las oportunidades a mis hijos que no tendrían en otras escuelas. Muchos del personal son bilingües y se pueden comunicar con sus hijos con más facilidad. So in English, South Shore has given my children the opportunity that they wouldn't have had at other schools. A lot of the personnel at the school are bilingual and can communicate with my children a lot easier. Kai, also a parent, I love the dual immersion program and diversity that South Shore offers. I like the communication methods. And from the students, Alex, a third grader, said, I like South Shore because I have made really good friends here. One of our newest newcomers says, me gusta esta escuela porque tengo muchas oportunidades de aprender y ahí hacemos muchas actividades divertidas. I like this school because I have a lot of opportunities to learn and we do a lot of fun activities. Eddie, one of our first graders, said, I like it here so much that I'm going to be the principal when Mrs. Beltran retires. So you have someone coming up already, ready to take over my job. And then our second grade team of teachers who are newer to our school. We at South Shore are giving students the strategies to expand their learning, immersed into an environment that is academic and culturally dynamic. Questions?
I do. I had a couple of questions if nobody else wants to jump in there. So you said that you had to cut off people wanting to get into the orchestra?
No, it was our ballet folklorico. So our ballet folklorico is new to our school. We started that this year. We opened it up. One of our previous parents had offered to show students how to dance these traditional dances from Mexico. She is a volunteer. And we had, within the first hour that we opened up the registration for that, we had well over 50 kids, and we had to cut it down to 30 And so we added a staff member to help support her with that.
Good.
It's huge interest.
The other question I had was on goal 4. And it looked, the darkest 2023. And it looks like compared to 2022, there's been a drastic improvement in the reduction of bad behavior. Is that kind of how I'm reading that?
It is visits to the focus room. And so what we are noticing is our teachers are doing a lot of the problem solving and keeping problems smaller and doing the problem solving early on. All of our classrooms also have an area in the classroom where the kids can go and one, problem solve, two, or de-escalate or calm down corner. We also have buddy room systems where the students can go into a different classroom and really think through what the problem was or the concern, and write down their thinking so that it's easier for them to problem solve. So keeping the problem smaller or catching the problems and helping students problem solve when the problems are smaller versus letting them get bigger.
Would you say that overall in the school, the behavior has gotten better this year than from last year or perhaps the year before? Are we seeing a general improvement?
I would say that we are getting better at helping students de-escalate a lot sooner.
Okay. Anybody else?
Questions? First, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you on behalf of the school district, and thank you on behalf of the community. How long have you been at South Shore?
I have been there as a teacher. I've been a teacher, a coach, a dean, but as a principal, 5-ish years.
But how long have you been at the school, though?
At the school, I would say about 10 years in different capacities.
So you've seen a lot.
I've seen a lot, yes.
In 2019, 2020, there were about 400 kids there, 400 students there. I assume because of just the number of classrooms available, you still had 16 teachers, or did you have more than that? Or can you remember?
Oh, my
Or is this
gosh.
just not a fair question?
We have less teachers now than we did then.
Okay, so specifically, you're at about 20 kids per classroom. I would assume that in pre-COVID, it was more than that.
Yes. I would say, though, that our numbers are going up, specifically because we now have a pre-K program that we didn't have before, and we are receiving a lot more newcomers than we had in previous years.
I was just curious if the lower number was helping. Is there a noticeable difference in the quality of instruction versus where you were in 2019, 2020?
I'd say that the quality of instruction comes from the teacher herself or himself. I think the fact that when you have less students, that individualized attention is greater, but the quality of the instruction comes directly from the teacher.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Marcy, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gardner, would you please recognize our next speaker?
Yeah, I want to recognize and introduce the vice principal and principal of Calapooya, where we sit tonight, Tristan Heisley, and vice principal Mark Tim. If you guys would come up. I do want to cite what Mr. Stafford Boyd had shared with me the other day in a walk-around. And I believe that the quote was from edX, was it Missy? Who has seen a lot of schools and remarked that this school, and she remarked after walking around with these gentlemen that this was the strongest school she had seen since COVID. And so this is greatly to their credit, and I want to recognize them for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was quite an honor. It was nice to have her tell that to us, because we feel like we've come a long way over the last several years, but for an outsider to let us know, an outsider that sees a lot of schools, that was pretty cool for us. So welcome to Calapooia Middle School. It's pretty cool that we're able to be here and present our school to you while we're standing here. So you want to stay up the whole time? You want to do the presentation?
Nope. I can sit down if you make it more comfortable.
Nope, whatever. All right, so at Calapooia, our mission is to build relationships, teach expectations, and expect to be challenged. In terms of our demographics, we have about 610 kids that go to Calapooia. It fluctuates daily. Kids leave and kids come. But in terms of our demographics, you can see we have about 16% of our kids are students with disabilities, 23%, so almost a quarter of our students at some point in their career were English language learners. And then in terms of demographics, our two biggest demographic groups are white students at 55% and Hispanic Latino students 36%. And then the last 9% are kind of a mix of other races and whatnot. Our Oregon at a glance school profile, you can see there's some good and some not so good on our school profile. So starting with an area of improvement for us, you can see in the upper right-hand corner, regular attenders. Our regular attenders percentage last year was 53%, which means that 47% of our students in our school were chronically absent. So they missed 10% or more, which over the course of the school year equates to a month of school they missed. So almost half of our student body missed a month of school last year. And that's one of our school improvement goals this year, is to improve that, and you'll see that in the slides to come. We've been working pretty hard on that to improve that, because it went down last year from the year before, which was a bummer for sure. But on the bottom, you can see some of the good. We have all three areas that we do state testing on. We improved in. Last year, when I did my presentation to the board, I told you all I thought we were going to see some pretty good improvement because of the hard work of our staff, and we certainly did. Specifically in English language arts, we improved by 9 percentage points from the year before. And in looking at data this year, I think we're on the verge of doing that for another year. So we went up by 3% in math last year and up by 6% in science. So not quite as high in math and science, but improvement nonetheless, for sure. Points of pride, this graph's kind of hard to see, but what you're looking at here, this is an indicator ratings table from the state, and along the side here, it has all of the different student groups, and this is like kind of where they're at in their learning. What you want to see on this typically is a lot of green and blue, right? But we've been pretty low in our scores. And so the two columns that you see some different colors on, those are the percentage of change from the previous year. And so you can see the one that's all blue, pretty much except for one, is our ELA change. And blue is the highest percentage of change that the state will recognize, basically. So for every different student group we have, pretty much, we had the highest percentage of change that the state recognizes for ELA last year. And then in math, it's the other column with some color in it there. You can see quite a few groups. We were green, which is the second highest percentage of change for testing. So our hope is that if we do that over the course of a couple years, these other columns will start turning green also. But right now, that's where we're at. Our attendance rate this year, we're really excited about. I'll get to that in a few slides. We're growing our bilingual ed program this year. We've added a whole bunch of students to the program that we had already. And last year, I had the opportunity to go to the National Association of Bilingual Educators Conference up in Portland. And we went to a school in Beaverton, and we got to see what a like really robust BEP program looks like. And it was really inspiring. And so we're gonna try to do something kind of similar here at Calapooya. And so this year we took a step in that direction and we hired a bilingual Spanish teacher. And so now we're offering Spanish science for the first time. And so our hope is that over the next several years, we'll be able to start offering more and more classes like that. So excited about that. And then the graph on the far right is our behavior at the end of the first quarter. And this is a big improvement from years before, certainly since COVID. So what you're looking at on this is when we pulled this data, we had 612 kids. And so the big green section of the pie is students who had either 0 or 1 referral for the first quarter. And so we had 566 out of 612 that either had no referrals or 1 referral for the first quarter, which is about 92% of our kids. So 92% of our kids are doing the right thing every single day. And that would still hold up right now, I'm pretty sure, if I pulled it again. And then I think in the previous years, we were at 82% after the first quarter and 87%. So definitely trending in the right direction there. And then the yellow slice of the pie is students who have in between 2 and 5 referrals. There were 40 that had in between 2 and 5 referrals in the first quarter. And then that tiny red sliver you can see is students who had 6 or more referrals. And there's 6 students in our entire, out of 612, that had 6 or more referrals. So we're talking about a very small group of students that are kind of being chronically disruptive at school here. So we're pretty excited about that because we've seen a lot of improvement there as well. So the next several slides are going to be about our school improvement plan. And so our focal student groups for our 3 goals for our school improvement plan are attendance, ELA outcomes, and math outcomes. For attendance, we wanted to have specific groups that we looked at when we pulled data. And so attendance, it's students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged students, and underserved races. For ELA and math, and we pulled that from 21-22 data, so it's a little different than this because this is our last year's data. Our focal student groups are going to be students with disabilities, ever language learners, and Hispanic Latino students. So in terms of barriers and challenges at our school, one of them is certainly attendance, as you saw last year, being at 53%. That makes it difficult when that many students are missing that much school. The next 2 barriers are not knocks on our staff at all. Our staff are great and they work super hard, but there are things that we need to work on as a staff, and we recognize that. So staff knowledge in terms of teaching reading and math. Math is an incredibly difficult subject to teach outside of math, other than in science and the shop classroom and things like that. It's very difficult to weave math into a lot of other subject areas. And then teaching reading. Secondary teachers typically aren't taught to teach a student how to actually read when they're in college. It's not something that they typically teach a secondary teacher because that's something that elementary teachers learn more about. So we're teaching that, we're doing a lot of that education with our staff. We have been for the last several years, and I think that's why some of our outcomes are better now. And then staff knowledge of engagement strategies. That's ongoing. We talk to staff and do PD constantly with staff about just making the classroom more engaging for our students. So they want to be here, so our attendance improves. So our first goal is reading and improving reading outcomes. This data is kind of hard to see on the screen. This is our September iReady diagnostic data. So we give students diagnostic testing 3 times a year, and they're placed in intervention if they need it based on that data. In September, our data showed that we were about 41% on track to pass SBAC. And so it's an improvement still from 38% last year. We are midway through diagnostic testing here this month. We're about 70% done with our students now, and we've seen a pretty big increase from that right now. But we're not done with it yet, so we can't quite say officially what we're looking like. But we are, once again, trending in the right direction in terms of our progress data. Our priority actions for reading, all reading intervention staff are trained in the correct intervention. That kind of seems like a no-brainer, but we haven't always been able to do that. And so this year we were excited. Our teachers knew what the intervention was that they were teaching. They knew how to run it. And so from day one, the kids were getting the best instruction they could. Our multi-tiered systems of support, we have a lot of team processes that we do, ranging from, every kid gets diagnostic tested here at school. We sit down as a team, we look at those tests, and we determine which intervention they need to go in. And then we're constantly progress monitoring the kids to make sure they're improving, and if they're not, then we have meetings about why they're not improving, and we can move them to different interventions. It's a big process that we have that all the middle schools do for MTSS. So that's part of that priority action for reading as well. We do iReady once a week, and so that's intervention tailored to each student. They take the diagnostic, and then the program, it's all online. So one day a week, every student gets reading and math intervention that's tailored to them. It's just instruction. They put on headphones, and they work at their level. And we have incentives for the kids if they're actually progressing. And kids have bought into that really well. While the kids are doing that in the classroom, teachers are pulling students for small group instruction, and they're getting groups together, like 3, 4, 5 kids, and they're matching it. All the kids that need the exact same instruction at the same level, they get them in a small group, and they do some small group instruction with those kids. And then, like I said, we're doing professional development constantly with AVID and QTEL engagement and reading instruction for staff. Our second goal is math, and same thing here. This is our iReady data. Not quite as optimistic in math. It has us at 16% passing the SBAC next year. That was in September, and there's a lot of learning loss over the summer, so I'm very optimistic that this is going to improve moving into their testing right now for math as well. So we don't have any data for January yet, but I think we're going to see improvement in that as well. Our priority actions for math are very similar. We have the similar processes to get students in intervention. It's not quite as robust because the middle school teams have been working with Oregon RTI for several years to get to where we are for reading, and math is brand new for us in terms of doing a diagnostic test and placing students in intervention. So this is actually the first year we've done that at Calapooia, where we diagnostic test students and then we place them in intervention based on that information. We have a couple different buckets of money that Calapooia gets that other schools don't, like Title. We get federal school improvement money as well. And so with that, we've hired a math intervention teacher it's the first time since I've been at Calapooia where like I said, we diagnostic test students and we put them in math intervention based on that data. And we bought some curriculum for them as well, and so students are receiving a lot of doses of math as well. So we're hoping to see some improvement there. And then similar to ELA, students are doing the iReady program one day a week, and then teachers are either doing small group work with students or doing individualized education with them, where they pull them and do individual work with them. Our last goal is attendance. And so you can see the improvement this year in our attendance. In 21-22, we were at 59% regular attenders. 22-23, we're at 53, and this year we're at 70%. So big improvement. Now, 21-22 and 22-23, those are end of year totals. So we have a lot of year left. We have about 100 days left in the year, so this could either go up or down. But we're way ahead of where we were last year at this exact same time in terms of our attendance. And
Can you summarize 2 or 3 of the major changes or the?
Yeah, that's the next slide.
Okay.
So we're part of an ESD pilot program. There's several schools here in GAPS that are part of this. We meet once a month with Ross from the ESD, and we just pour over data, and we talk about ways we can improve our attendance, and we do a lot of parent outreach, whether it's over Parent Square or just individual calls where we're talking to parents. We've hired an attendance officer. She's not really an officer, but she does a lot of outreach with parents. She goes and meets parents at their houses and talks to them about attendance. She does incentives with kids. There's a whole bunch of things that happen there. Our PBIS and instructional leadership team, when we meet, a lot of times we're just talking about how we can make school a better place for the kids. And so I think that's a part of the attendance improving as well, is just making it a place where the kids want to be. Like I said before, we do a lot of professional development using AVID and QTEL engagement strategies. So when they're in the classroom, it's not as much sit and get, and it's a little more engaging. We have lots of attendance processes here at school, ranging from, we do weekly video announcements, and I'm on there every week, whether the kids like it or not. And I'm always every single week I talk about attendance and some aspect of attendance. It's always one of the first things I'm talking about. We do Nintendo Switch parties here in the cafeteria where we put up Mario Kart, and we do rewards where kids get to play with friends if their attendance improves, or we have like no tardy games where we do things like that. We have a lot of incentives for kids, not just for kids that have great attendance, but for kids who are improving their attendance also. And then lots of parent notification strategies. We're learning through our ESD pilot that all the different ways we can reach out to parents and talk to them about attendance and make it so it's not negative when we're reaching out to them. We're trying to make it positive, positively stated, instead of just saying, your kid's gone a lot. We're trying to just get them to see the impact that's going to have on their student. And then last slide here, the people say. So we had several parents and some staff and a few students. One parent in the Safe and Civil School survey that was sent out earlier this year said, when my daughter had a problem with a boy at school, it was taken seriously and dealt with in an appropriate manner, so she felt safe and heard, which is a great thing for us to hear, that we're making that difference. I put a funny one down there. One student said his favorite thing about the school is the nachos. The two in the middle there are from sixth graders, and I thought they were really important to mention because middle school isn't always a place that's super accepting of students. And both sixth graders talked about how they like Calapui because we accept everyone. And the other student said that we support everyone no matter who or what they are. I thought that's really powerful coming from a middle schooler. And then the two on the left are staff. And one said, leadership and coworkers, in my 21 years, this is the most positive environment I've ever worked in. And then in the Safe and Civil School survey, a staff member said, Calapui Middle School is a pretty good school. There are minor issues, but overall the environment is positive for both students and staff. My main complaint is that there are a handful of students whose behavior problems are excessive and may need more help than this school can offer, which you kind of saw on that behavior slide as well. So that is all I have. Now to the fun part, the questions.
Sure. Go for it. Oh, sorry. Mine's kind of about the attendance. Do you notice there's any common through lines for what is causing the lack of regular attendance, or is there anything you can point to on that front?
I mean, attendance has been really low since COVID. That's just, I was looking this morning I was looking at our school report card from prior to COVID and since COVID. And prior to COVID, the few years leading up to it, we were around 80%. And then COVID hit, and then we've been in the 50s ever since. So something happened then. Just like kind of with behavior and a lot of other things, it kind of changed. The whole nature of things changed with COVID. So, but I feel like we're getting back to close. We're getting closer to normal every day. So
I was just curious if the new program had pointed out if there was any common through lines or anything. So
no.
Cool. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
It seems like you've got a lot of positivity, and their staff's really excited about being here, and things are moving in the right direction. So congratulations to you for that. That's really neat. When you talk about students who are a little bit more than available or able to, what's your thoughts on how do we reach those students? How do we?
That's a really difficult question.
I understand that wasn't a softball.
Yeah, I don't think there's an easy answer to that either, because student behavior is complex, and you have to really get to know students to understand why things are happening that are happening. I know that I feel like we could improve some of our offerings outside of like the big box schools. Right now, we don't have a lot of options in terms of behavior for students outside of the school. We just don't. And that's not a knock on the district or anything. Like, we've had things happen where like our Fairmount school isn't fully up and staffed and running quite yet. It's getting there. They stole our dean of students, which is great for him, but and hopefully that is good for everybody. But so there are things I think we can do, but it's not simple. And we have the alt school at Memorial, but that's really not for behavior students either. That's for students who don't kind of fit into the mold. And so it would be nice to figure out another solution for those handful. Like you saw on our slides, it's just 6 kids. It's not a huge group of kids. And that's kind of contradictory to what you hear out in the news and stuff. It's not a huge, behavior is not out of control. So it's just a handful of kids.
So first, thank you. Appreciate your service to the district and the community. You guys do a great job here. You're down about 87 students versus pre-COVID. Do you need to be to catch up with COVID? Is it a different learning environment? At the end of the day, it's about the teacher? Talk about that a little bit.
Sorry, I don't really understand the question.
Well, I'm assuming that you have the same staffing levels you had pre-COVID?
Just about.
And you're down about number of students that you had, 10%? Do you notice the difference, and does that help? Class size is smaller?
I don't think class sizes are too much different than pre-COVID, to be honest with you. In our core classes, we're running about 28 to 30 kids in core classes, which is what we were prior to COVID. We have a lot of classes that are smaller that pull kids, like our intervention classes that might have like 5 to 10 kids in them that kind of balance that out, so that isn't that's not certainly how every class in our school is. And we have several more staff now than we had before that we hire with title funding, like our instructional coaches and things like that. So we have the same level of staffing, but it's just kind of different how they're spread out within our building.
Okay.
So
Now the tough one. I've really liked the way this room was decorated, and you got a little problem going forward. Do the banners stay up, or are you gonna remodel?
Mark and I were talking about that, and we were talking about just replacing them with like Portland State and Western Oregon and all the schools around here, that George Fox, those kind of like all those
South
kind of
Albany.
schools. What's that?
South Albany.
Sure, yes.
Where's
LBCC.
Stanford and Cal? How did they not
So
make the cut?
I was telling Andy this morning. You can see some holes right there and right there. We had some kids in here after school with a ball one day, and they knocked them down. And I had to put those up with a lift myself, and we haven't had a lift in our building, so I haven't been able to do it. So as soon as we get a lift, I won't put those back up because Pac-12 is irrelevant.
Mr. Sean Taylor is a Cal Berkeley grad, so he noticed it.
You can leave the Stanford one down, it's fine.
I had a question.
Sure, please.
So
Yeah.
first of all, good to see you, Tristan. It's been a
Yeah,
while.
you too.
Behavior data looks amazing. I never thought I'd see a PBIS, green zone, yellow zone, red zone, set the way it's supposed to be. Is it fair to say that extrapolate from this data that the amount of referrals are down from last year? The total?
Oh, the amount of referrals are way down.
Wait, no, okay.
Yeah.
And where are you getting this data? What system are you pulling it from or putting it into?
So we pulled that just from Synergy.
So Synergy does have this data.
They do, but it probably took It probably took me 2 hours to compile that.
Okay, fair enough.
It's not like the days with Swiss where you just, bam, it's there.
Yeah.
Not yet, at least.
And you don't, and it doesn't have a bridge with Swiss, so you can't use Swiss?
Not yet. We're
Not yet.
supposed to soon.
Okay. And then the yellow zone, you may not know this then, is that, if you look at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade distribution, is it go one way or the other? Is it evenly distributed among the three?
No, 6th grade's really low. 6th grade's low across the board. 7th grade's pretty high. 8th grade's actually low this year as well.
Oh, so
Our
7th grade is-
7th grade, like, right in the middle is kind of,
And were they tough last year too? Is it a group
no,
that's
they
moving through?
they
or it's
were
just-
not tough last year,
Okay.
which is interesting.
So it's being 7th grade that's.
Yeah, it's, 7th graders.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, nice job then.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Tristan.
All
Appreciate your
right,
time.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Great job, Tristan. Thank you.
Okay, we're to the consent agenda, personnel licensed.
I'm excited that we're going to get some data in the future with this, but I really love that we're moving forward. So I'll move to approve personnel licensed as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Personnel classified.
I'll move to approve personnel classified as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes from the regular meeting from December 11th, 2023.
Sure. I'll move to approve minutes, regular board meeting 12/11/23 as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any old business, gentlemen? Ms. Jane, let's go to business financial update.
Thank you. So in January, all of the school districts across the state submit to ODE what we believe our taxes and our student count, all the components of our funding will be to revise what we did a year ago. So this week, I will be submitting to ODE what I believe our ADM is, what I believe our tax revenues will be, and then the funding for 23-24 will be adjusted based on that. And so that is why I gave you the ADM report and wanted to talk a little bit about the taxes on the financial report. So if you look at the top of the financial report, the taxes, if they showed year-to-date, would be about $1 million over what we projected for budget. So pretty close. I had projected the tax receipts to be about 3.5% above last year's receipts. And so when I'm doing this, I'm doing it based on what we had received last year in January. So I don't have the whole year to date. So really close. And then as the other districts report to ODE their changes, ODE will balance tax receipts with basic school support. So if it were just gaps, ours would go down about $1 million. Basic school support would be reduced about $1 million. But because all the districts will be balanced based on how they've projected, sometimes our basic school support will go up, sometimes it'll go down, because it's a lot of pieces. And so I'll be able to report that back to you. It's in February. Usually that ODE finishes all that work and gives us our new funding number. And at the same time, I will be giving them 24-25 projections as far as our student counts, our funding components. And so the other piece of this financial report, I did put in my best guess at what the classified bargaining retro would cost us. And the bottom number, the 13,445, is where, at the time I did this report, where I believe we would end up, which is really good. We started with about 14 million, and we're ending, according to this, at about 13.5. Now, there are many components of that retro that make it difficult to project. The step movements, where we're adding a step, makes it more complex. So we'll see how close my guess is after we process all of that. Are there questions on the financials?
Roger?
First, great job. This is easy to follow, and the numbers look fairly good. I would call to the board's attention. We were, I think all to some level had some angst about a budget that had deficit spending in it and the level of that. And this beginning balance was 14 million, and based on the projection, we would end at 13,445, which means the math was good when we approved the budget, but even better, people, it would appear, are showing some fiscal restraint in spending, and you've got financial controls in place that are working. So, well done, thank you.
Thank you. Part of what helps us is the interest. If you look at our interest, it's $1 million over what we budgeted. And I did that partly intentional. I didn't know the interest would be as high as it is. But on a revenue like interest where it doesn't have to be offset by the state, I like to guesstimate low as a little bit of cushion. And so that's where some of that increased ending fund balance comes from.
So with the interest, those funds just sit in the state investment pool?
Correct.
Okay.
So there's about 10 million in bond funds that is currently helping us.
Anybody else? Thank you, Jane, appreciate that. Oh, wait,
I
sorry.
got
Oh,
one.
I
So-
did want
Yeah.
to mention the ADM report.
Oh, thank you.
If you go to the very last page, the last line, I just wanted to show you across the years, it looks like the district has really become stabilized in our student count. So 2021, it dropped a little bit from the prior year, but since then, it stayed consistent around 8,950. So that's really good. Many districts in the states are not seeing that, so I think that speaks well of our district. But then the very last column, the green column, that's the budget. Last year in January, when I projected how many students we would have, I'm 70 over what the second period ADM report shows. And cumulative ADM traditionally is lower than second period because we have seniors who the last term maybe take a half a day. It just drops. And so when I correct that with the state, instead of 70, I probably will make it like 85. So a reduction of 85 ADM weighted students. That's going to be about $850,000 reduction. But I have heard from other districts like Salem's down, Portland's down. So the amount we receive per student in all of the work the state is doing most likely will increase. So that impact will be lessened for us.
So I have one question. Jane, when you look at the total 1920, it was 9,340. Is that the ADMR?
Yes,
Okay.
those are all ADMR numbers.
And that's not a total body. So you'll recall, board members, that Director Aguinaga last year had said 9,550 kids, and now we're down. We should remember that this number is an adjusted number down. And so in that same year, when it showed 9,550, the ADMR adjusted number is 9,340. So by this formula, we are down about 350 kids and not 500 kids. Right?
So-
So which is not as bad.
Question for you. So how did we come up with the 9,025 number in January? I mean, so where's that delta? Where did we not have as many kindergartens? Did people decide to go private school, or we don't really have any idea? We just know there's less kids.
So when I projected the 9,025, that was January a year ago. And that is the number I told ODE, because I was looking at the second period report we had gotten. And I was hopeful that maybe it would increase a little bit. And so that was my guess.
Okay, I mean, obviously, it's your best guess. So we don't really know, we just didn't grow like we thought we might have.
Correct.
You'll recall that Mr. Saxon has shown, at least you guys.
Population growth.
That population growth survey that continued to show growth. We just aren't seeing that.
So we don't really know if it's not really growing or they're not showing up to public school.
So I think based on the numbers I see for 24, 25, I will just project flat.
Well, I think, I just saw some Portland State Census numbers, and I think that Albany as a city, the population has actually gone down. So, Lebanon went up, Sweet Home went up, Albany went down, for whatever reason. So, I don't think we're losing kids to other places versus the population trend just hasn't developed the way they thought at this point.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So in case anybody's wondering, Michigan beat Washington 34-13 in a final, just in case you were following it or not following it. Stacy, would you please come on up and share with us?
Just working on sharing my screen, just a second.
You bet.
There we go, okay. I am Stacy Lee, I'm the curriculum coordinator, but part of my job is being the district administrator for our bilingual education programs. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about tonight, and I'm really excited because we have never had a formal presentation like this. It's our first of what we hope is many annual reports for the bilingual education program, or the El Programa de Educación Bilingüe. There we go. Demographics. So our total, the way that I created this was to look at our total enrollment for the schools that have bilingual education programs, and then look at our bilingual education program enrollment specifically. So we have a bilingual education program at South Shore Elementary as our only elementary school with this program, at Calapooya Middle School, at North Albany Middle School, and then at South Albany High School. And you can see our bilingual ed enrollment at South Shore is 100% of the student population. At Calapooya, it's about 11%. At North Albany Middle School, it's about 13%. And at South Albany High School, it's about 12% of the total student population there. It's 7% of our district population. Then I looked at preferred languages for guardians of students who are in the bilingual ed program. And so if one of the parents, at least, it could be one or both, marked Spanish, then they're marked in the Spanish column. And if they only marked English, then they're in the English column. And so we have a pretty even split at South Shore Elementary, where you have 52% of the parents having at least, of the families having at least one parent preferring Spanish, and 48% having English only at home. Or preferred that way for school communication. It's actually not a perfect measure. It doesn't mean those parents don't speak any Spanish. It's what they prefer communication from the school for. Calapooya, about 69% of students in BEP have at least one parent that prefers Spanish communication. North Albany Middle School, 71% of the BEP students. And at South Albany High School, 82% of the students who are in the bilingual ed program have at least one parent who prefers Spanish communication. This is pretty typical that as the program advances into middle school and high school, the students that are added are students who have Spanish at home. And so you might lose some students from the program, but as you're gaining new students, you're only really gaining students that already have some Spanish. And so you'll see those percentages go up. Race and ethnicity, so the W is white, and so at South Shore Elementary, you have about 22% of your students that are white. By South Albany High School, it's about 11% of students who are white, non-Hispanic, and Latino. Under Hispanic and Latina, you see 69% of students at South Shore Elementary identify that way. At South Albany High School, it's 87%, and it's closer, as the secondary programs, it goes up. 2 or more races, Asian, American Indian and Alaska Native is next, sorry. Then Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, and then Asian is our smallest group with just the 1 student at South Shore. So, why do we have a bilingual education program? Why is bilingual education important? And there are 2 main reasons. So the first is that there is a significant research basis to expect better long-term results for students who are in bilingual education programs. And so I have this little clip right here you can hardly see, but it's one of the premier studies that was done. It's a longitudinal study of Portland Public Schools, of students that were in different dual language and bilingual programs. Portland has a lottery system, so it's very easy to have a comparison group of whether if you applied for the program and made it in or didn't make it in. And they showed that those students outperformed their peers in English by 5th grade and substantially by 8th grade in English reading. They exit students quicker from English language development classes, and on top of that, you have students that are graduating bilingual and bicultural. So they're outperforming their English peers and having these additional advantages. I will say there's a huge body of research. I'm just using Portland as an example that all point to those same 3 goals. The other reason, why do we have bilingual education? Because our demographics compel us to, and that's really how it started, was looking at how many students. We started the program looking at how many students are in our ELD programs and how are they doing. And then how many of our families that are new that are coming in are Hispanic and Latino, and that has only continued to grow. So we have 24.7% of all K-12 students in our school district identify as Hispanic or Latino. 11.2% of our parents district-wide have prefer Spanish communication from the school district. 13.6% of our current K-12 students district-wide identify as ever English learners. And within that, Spanish is the largest group. Our demographics, this was interesting to me looking at those 3 things. So if you're looking at who identifies as Hispanic Latina, who has at least 1 parent that prefers Spanish, and who was ever identified as needing English learner services, it's pretty consistent across the grade levels. So I actually expected it to be higher in elementary school, but it's pretty stable straight across. Kindergarten, we actually have a little bit of what I think is probably a fluke of people under-identifying. It takes a little while to find all your kindergartners sometimes, and parents may be a little bit shy about putting Spanish on their preferred list for communication from the school district. But otherwise, you see it's a pretty steady 25% of our students that identify as Hispanic and Latina across the district. So when you look at what is a high-quality program model for bilingual education, so the literature and research will show you it's a K-12 dual language program. And so having students from a variety of different backgrounds, different home languages, and different levels of exposure to English and Spanish, all taking classes together. Having literacy in both languages, in English and Spanish, from the start. In elementary school, the best programs start with a higher percentage of instructional time in Spanish, and then they gradually move to even, where it's about 50-50 of how much time is spent in English and how much in Spanish during the day. For secondary, that ideal is still 50-50, with your classes being distributed between classes that are in English and classes that are offered in Spanish. To be considered a dual language program at the secondary, you need at least 2 classes in Spanish. And those classes that are designated in Spanish are meant to be taught entirely in Spanish. So where do we fit? This is our current model. So K-5, we have our Spanish-English dual immersion school at South Shore Elementary. And you have a mix of different levels of English and Spanish in their homes. Literacy is taught in both languages, in English and Spanish, from the very beginning. Kinder starts with a higher percentage of instructional time in Spanish, and students gradually move to the 50-50 distribution in English and Spanish. So our basic model is right there with what research said works best. For grades 6 through 12, we don't really have a dual immersion program. We have more of a maintenance bilingual ed program because we're normally only offering one designated class in Spanish. And so our programs with only one class, they say, this is a quote from Nichols' study of secondary programs, they seek to maintain a student's current level of literacy in the partner language. So with just one class, we can't expect to see a lot of growth in student Spanish level. We're just hoping to at least maintain their Spanish level. And then designated secondary classes that are designated as bilingual ed are taught entirely in Spanish, and that is true. Points of pride. So our first kindergarten and first grade classes, we started with 2 kindergarten classes and 1 first grade class. That was in fall of 2009 at South Shore. And then South Shore became a school-wide program. Well, that was originally just the strand going through. It became that everyone who goes to South Shore is part of the bilingual program in fall of 2017. Those first kindergartners and first graders have graduated now. The first class graduated in spring of 2021. We had a big celebration for them at South. It was lots of fun. New secondary courses. So we switched some of our classes around at South Albany High School, looked at them again, and realized that we could offer language arts credit with new state law for classes taught in 10th grade. So the 10th graders in our bilingual ed program are following language arts standards in Spanish, and the students are receiving language arts credit. Science, we got to add 7th grade science at Calapooya, as Tristan shared with all of you. We were able to hire a science teacher that can teach classes in Spanish. She actually did our student teaching here last year and was part of our Grow Your Own program, which we really appreciated being able to keep her here. And so 7th graders are getting more of a dual language program because they have the minimum 2 classes that are in Spanish just here at Calapooya. And really our goal, as Tristan said, is to keep hiring more content area Spanish teachers so we can offer more of those classes and build that secondary program. Social studies at Calapooya and NAMS, we looked at our 6th grade classes and what the transition could look like, and so from elementary school into middle school. And so we shifted that focus to be more on social studies, which frees up more of their day. So they're not taking 2 social studies classes, they're taking social studies in Spanish, which allows them to have time that was otherwise taken up by an elective and gives students a little more freedom on their schedule. So we're excited about how that's been going and been really watching how to develop that. Our K-5 language arts curriculum, which we appreciate being able to adopt, thanks to the board. We prioritized having a Spanish complement to the English that was the same rigor and had the same level of complexity in how we teach language arts. And so we have Into Reading for English, and we have Arriba la Lectura, which from the same publisher, that are meant to work together for our language arts classes at South Shore. And that's been a really big help to have a full, robust program that matches exactly with the English. As Marcy talked to you about, one of the nice things of being able to have more newcomers this year is that transportation has improved this year for South Shore. And so our transportation department has been able to create some hubs around the city to offer to help get kids to South Shore. And we've had a lot of new families that are just arrived in Albany, maybe new to Oregon or new to learning in English at all and being in US schools, be able to come to South Shore and have all the supports of a bilingual education program available to them. It's still a choice for those families, but in the past we've offered that choice and then said, we don't have a bus for you. And now we can say there are busing options from your neighborhood. So that's been really wonderful. And then we offer the Oregon State Seal of Biliteracy and Multiliteracy. That is something we've done now, I think, 6 years. Our numbers went way up as those kindergartners when they became seniors, our first kindergarten, we saw our numbers double of who we were able to, who earned the Oregon State Seal of Biliteracy. It's not something we award. It has a statewide level of what students have to meet. It's very rigorous, and they've actually made it more rigorous the last 2 years. So 2 years ago, we had 42 students receive it. Last year, we had 38 because we had a late change in rules. This year, we expect it to be over 40, but we're just starting to gear up for students to actually take those tests and to look at their scores. They have to score at an intermediate, advanced, or advanced level in 2 languages. And so it's usually English and Spanish, although we offer it to any students we've had. Susie's here. We had some brothers come through and try in Punjabi 2 years ago and pass it. But they have to now also show that they're at that level of English. They have to be on track for graduation. It goes on their actual graduation diploma when they receive it, a big fancy certificate. The students get a special stole and recognition at graduation, and so we make a big deal out of it. Colleges are starting to look at it. It's something that they can get credit for often, too. Barriers and challenges, support. So recruitment and retention of bilingual administrators, teachers, and classified staff. It's hard to expand a program without the right people in place. And so getting more bilingual staff and administrators is important. It's especially important and especially challenging for secondary teachers because we need them in content areas. So having someone that's able to teach chemistry, but not only teach chemistry, but teach it in Spanish and understand the Spanish vocabulary of chemistry. There's not a lot of them out there, and if they are there, we want them here. And so helping find, recruit, and retain those people are really important. Adding schools and secondary courses that we would love to have more of our schools offer this program. We have large populations at other schools. Having a second elementary school, being able to just continually expand what we can offer to our secondary students is all just, there's a lot of pieces to it. A big part of it is staffing, but also support from school board, support from administrators. Transportation, so transportation is better because we have these hubs for K-5. We still don't offer any transportation for middle school and high school students to continue the program. So, middle and high school students have to, they can apply for a transfer if they don't live in Kalapuya or NAM's area and they want to continue the program. But we don't offer any transportation for them if they live outside of those 2 areas. Same with the high school. There's no transportation if you live in the West Albany High School area. You might be accepted to continue at South, but you'll have to transport yourself. District support structures, these are all things we've done and have been working on, but we can continue to grow and do more for. So translation and interpretation, we have our wonderful Welcome Center. We have bilingual assistants who are trained to interpret and work at each of our schools. I think every office in the school district now has someone who is bilingual, but there's always more to do with that number of parents preferring Spanish, and also just thinking about how many materials that we receive in English only that have to be translated or we have to determine what to do with them. Data collection and analysis, I'll talk more about that one a little bit. Curriculum, we have, as we've been adopting new curriculum, really prioritizing having robust materials available in Spanish also, but that's always an issue. It's a lot easier to find things in English than find it in Spanish. And professional development specific to bilingual education. This is something that South Shore has been working on, as they talked about. I've been meeting with our secondary team, and we've 4 times this year, working with professional development together. As Tristan mentioned, one of the big pluses is last year we were able to take a large group to the National Association for Bilingual Education Conference. It was in Oregon for the first time. It's actually the first time in the Northwest. And that was a huge motivation for people to be able to learn directly from professionals. The secondary team all got to visit 2 schools in Beaverton. That was a wonderful opportunity to see robust programs, as Tristan said, and discuss and debrief that together. So we're building off of the momentum. And let's see, master scheduling is always complicated when you have just one section or two sections of classes. It's secondary, so. Our mission and our vision, so the goal of our program is to increase the academic achievement of emergent bilingual learners while empowering students through multilingualism and nurturing the diverse identities, languages, races, and cultural heritage of students and families in the Albany community. And really what that fits with are the three pillars of bilingual education. So it's around academic achievement, bilingualism, and sociocultural competence. So helping students meet those grade level standards and expectations, making sure helping them develop their language skills so they can speak, listen, read, and write in both English and Spanish. And then sociocultural competence is just a fancy way of saying being able to communicate appropriately into the situation and the culture. Our priority actions. So Synergy is a big change for us, and our goal is to identify bilingual ed students in Synergy. That first graph of demographics that I showed you, John Dilbone had to draw a bunch of data for me, and then there was a mistake in it. He was gone over winter break on the day that I was working on it. So I went through and manually checked each student. Because we don't have a flag for our bilingual ed students in our student information system. So manually checking 640 students takes a long time. And it's really hard to track when we look at graduation. Students who've been in the bilingual education program, we like to see who's a senior who's been here since kindergarten coming all the way through. There's a good chance if they were at South Shore, especially since it's become a whole school program, that I know that they're in the program, but once they're at North or Calapooya, it's a guess. I'd have to go look at their individual transcripts. So we're really excited that Synergy is here now because this is a good time to transition to flagging those students and being able to pull their data more easily. It also, we hope, provides some of the answers to Marcy's problems with being able to compare data in both languages and pull it up. There's some capabilities in Synergy that we can play around with and learn from. This will increase our ability to track how students are doing with their academic achievement and how they're assessed on their language skills. Providing additional sociocultural learning opportunities and community connections. This was a fun thing we saw Beaverton schools doing. A lot of work to build the community within the program and to connect people to the greater community. We've done some of this with our high school students, especially seniors, of looking like how do you use these languages outside of once you graduate? How is being bilingual going to better the community and change your trajectory after high school? But we also have a new partnership. So OSU is starting, they're about to kick off the opening of PRAX, their new Performing Arts Center. And they've called us and wanted to partner with the school district, and they were most excited about the bilingual program. So all those kids that were excited about the folklorico, ballet folklorico, there's an opportunity for 3rd through 5th graders at South Shore. We're going to take all 3 grade levels for free. It just costs our transportation costs to go over to OSU in May. And Mariachi Divas, which is a Grammy Award-winning mariachi group, is going to perform for us. So we're really excited to go over and participate in that. They're also bringing in a bilingual group that does a lot of workshops with schools, going to come over and perform for all our middle and high school students that are in the bilingual ed program. So we're just looking for more opportunities to build community within the program, but also have people see role models and branch out into the community from our schools. And then increasing the visibility of our program, being here tonight is part of that. We're just continually looking for ways for people to know more about what we're doing and to be more proactive in recruiting new families. And prioritizing hiring qualified bilingual candidates. And hi, Susie, I'm looking at you. We're looking at HR for help, but really it's our administrators and as Tristan was saying, I think that going to that NABE conference and seeing what a robust program, I know that's a priority for them too at our bilingual program. Okay, so why bilingual ed? I was trying to think the best way to do quotes for this, and I had this last-minute request to our secondary bilingual ed teachers, like, can I come visit your class right after break? And North Albany Middle School said, sure, come on over. So I went and spent the morning with the 7th grade bilingual ed class. And we had a whole class discussion. So they broke into little small groups and started talking. They were like, if you were going to talk to the school board, what would you tell them about being in the bilingual ed program and why it's important? And then we just randomly called on kids. So Ulysses wants you to know there's more money and job opportunities by being bilingual. And this is how we started off. I'm giving it to you basically in the order of how it came up in class. Then Jessica said, well, it'll be useful in the future. Then Denise said, well, it would help my family and I could help other people too. And then Annette said, well, to improve our languages, she wanted to make sure you knew two, right? Improve, and Spanish is her first language. Ramon said, oh, well, biliteracy, that's good. Esther said, to make my mom proud. And then we were asking Esther, is it just your mom? And she's like, well, no, my dad too. And then Alejo said, well, it's our cultural identity. And then Aiden said, it's our roots. It's in our blood. And they were saying this mostly in Spanish. I'm interpreting for you, but you see the picture, Alyssa, their teacher, was taking notes on the whiteboard in Spanish for this. Aiden talked to me later in the hallway a little bit more to tell me about it, and it turns out I was his mom's teacher when she was a newcomer. And so he was describing the difference between what he is experiencing and what his mom experienced. And it was such a sweet moment because he was saying, when his mom came, she had learned a little bit of English from watching TV. And then she came to Albany, and she was at Calapooya and then at South Albany High School. And everything was in English. And she became more comfortable in English. So even though they speak Spanish at home, she didn't have any of that academic support when she was here for keeping her academic Spanish going. And so he's having a completely different experience where he's keeping his academics going and his vocabulary in both languages and his language abilities in general in both languages going. And so when they go places like to visit their family in Mexico, he had the experience of people being really impressed as relatives, that they couldn't trick him or that he was keeping up with them and communicating well with them in Spanish, and they were very proud of him for that, and his mother's very proud of him for that too. And then Alejandro said, I can relate to more students. And part of it was, why does he care about the bilingual ed program is because he relates to the other students in that class specifically too, because they're also bilingual students who are growing up in these multilingual families and identify as Latino. So that's our bilingual ed program in a nutshell, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Yeah, I've got some. I'll go in order of the slides because I have a few. The first one's a demographic question. Do you have a sense as to how many of the kids at South Shore aren't South Shore neighborhood kids? Like what percentage?
I don't, and I think Marcy.
It's okay. I was just.
Do you know? How many would be in the South Shore area, in that neighborhood?
Like what percentage, actually what percentage aren't from South Shore?
That attend South Shore.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, we could get it for you.
Yeah, so I didn't know if it was like 25%, 50%, 1%.
Yeah, when we first started the program, which you were around during that time, Ryan, Ryan was my supervisor during one of those years when we were doing the planning for it. South Shore was the second highest ELD population, and that was the same year that Timber Ridge opened. So part of South Shore starting at that time was because we were doing a major change of boundaries. It all happened at once. And they were, it quickly became the highest ELD population with that shift. So it had a substantial population that seems fairly steady, but there are a lot of transfer students.
Okay. I mean, your middle school numbers are split almost exactly between Calapooya and North, which would imply half of the kids aren't from South Shore, but that's probably not true. So.
Well, most of the kids end up, it's probably like 2/3, 1/3, really, that are coming from South Shore, 2/3 to NAMS, 1/3 to Calapooya. Calapooya gets more newcomers and more people that come from, like Sunrise has a large ELD population, Periwinkle has a somewhat large. So they add more new students to the program and end up somewhat even. And
Gotcha, okay. And I was just asking because that kind of goes to expanding it and
Oh,
those
yeah,
kind of things.
definitely.
The next question, and you kind of got to this with the synergy thing, but I'm wondering, under the old system SIS, did you say there's significant research basis for better long-term academic results? Have we seen that in our bilingual program?
We've seen pieces of it, but it's been really hard to track because it's hard to track those kids. And so now that we'll be able to add the synergy, then it's going to be a lot easier to pull that data. So I couldn't stand behind any data right now clearly on it just because it's been so hard to track the students long-term.
Okay. Let's go. And then the other thing, I'm glad the family got their transportation thing somewhat figured out, K-5, because I know that was a long battle for a lot of years, so that's cool. That's good-
Yeah,
good
that's
progress.
new this year, and
Yeah.
so it's exciting.
Yeah, cool. I think that's pretty much all I had.
Questions, well done, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stacy. Appreciate it. I think
Thanks.
we're good.
Thank you, Stacy. Good work.
So the eighth grade credit from Bradley's
You can make that, well, I can give me a perspective. If I was gonna cut to the chase, isn't it a bad idea? Yeah, obviously we did great, and to stop taking math.
Ms. Kelsey,
Yes,
are you super excited?
thrilled.
I can tell. You're,
I'm freezing, actually, is what it is. But, yeah, I'm really excited to share with y'all, data beyond numbers today. Oh my gosh, I apologize. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Data beyond the numbers, we're gonna be sharing the data quarterly with you. We just found that tracking it, that way you're gonna see a broader, a better picture of the number, tracking it that way. However, there's a lot to talk about in terms of ways that we're being proactive with bias incident and supporting students and families beyond just reacting to large amounts of bias reporting. So I wanted to give you some updates about what that's looked like. By and large, we have schools getting more consistent with their tracking in general, so our numbers are much more accurate than they were last year. I know that that's just going to continue to grow, which, again, I encourage admin and staff to not be afraid of those numbers. It just means that we're getting a clear picture of what's happening, which allows us to appropriately track students, support teams and families, and figure out how to move things forward in a positive way. We're finding that administrators are really leaning into our support. We're asked for resources. So currently, my team is working on a hub of resources for curricula and conversations around racial bias. And each month when we put out our newsletters, we focus on a couple of things to highlight and hang up in schools. And we're also going to start linking resources to have conversations around those big pieces that are happening. So, for example, Martin Luther King Day, in a newsletter, we'll have a leaflet to hang up on walls as well as some resources for teachers to discuss those topics. And additionally, we'll be going through some scenarios as well to help admin and teachers alike feel more confident when they're interrupting situations or dealing with bias incidents after the fact. I think I shared with y'all actually a level 3 scenario that we'll be going through with our admin next week at last time I presented, which included all of the questions that we ask as well. We'll be having teams go through those questions to really feel confident in real time. And that was a response to direct asks from our administrators. They really want to feel confident when they're dealing with these situations. Additionally, we've been working directly with students and families who are experiencing harm, which is really centering, restorative practice and with the focus on who's mostly impacted. So not to say that we're not dealing with students who are causing harm, but that we really want to make sure that the students who are experiencing harm feel safe and secure and able to return to school and feel confident and sit down and learn, and that their parents feel confident in sending their kiddos back to a place where they've been harmed, right? With that in mind, however, we have continued to track students who are struggling to understand that causing harm to their peers isn't appropriate. If you recall, the last time we shared data with y'all, there was a small number of students who were struggling to understand. So I wanted to share with you a couple of stories around how we're dealing with those situations. So I heard directly from a parent at one of the schools in our district and was able to communicate directly with the administrator at that school, reach out to them about what I was hearing from a parent and giving them support along with their supervisor about what that parent was needing. And then I went directly down to that school a couple days later and talked with the administrators about what they discovered with the students who were causing harm, what plans they had in action to be dealing with that appropriately, and that asking them what support they needed in terms of communicating with the parents and students to make sure that that kind of went full circle, and then gave them the ability to have that conversation with those parents, and then heard directly from that parent that they were pleased with the outcome. And just the week before, that same parent was up in arms, completely overwhelmed with what was impacting their student, and I was greatly impressed with this particular team and the parents' ability to have confidence in our process, and that they felt satisfied with how we handled that situation, and that they also felt comfortable with their kiddo being in our school space based on that reaction. Another student at a different school we learned was having some impulse control, so we did some work with the team to figure out, okay, what's happening here? Is this really like racial bias, or is it this kiddo is struggling to regulate themselves and is having some impulse control around situationals when they're overwhelmed or frustrated? Do they really understand what it is that they're saying? This was a little. So we decided to do figure out an IEP plan, do some additional testing, set back from my team's perspective, and then we're going to circle back, I believe, next week to figure out what our plan is moving forward now that kiddo is getting appropriate support in terms of their learning and neurodivergency as well. And then lastly, a situation that comes to mind is a couple of kiddos who are having some behaviors that I worked directly with this administrator to send out a survey to her team to figure out what things specifically they need to feel confident interrupting these situations and dealing with them. And we'll be doing a training with those folks in about 2 weeks, I believe, based on what survey results we're getting. And our hope is that that team then will also feel confident in their ability to interrupt and deal with these situations in real time. So I just wanted to give you all a little bit of information about what we're doing with those kiddos who are continuing to reoffend or cause harm, that it's not just sent out into the abyss where we're not handling those situations appropriately, that there's a lot of effort that goes into tracking and mitigating it based on the situation. And additionally, we're going to be doing our mid-year checks. So at the beginning of the school year, I worked with my team to meet with every single administrator and introduce myself, speak to them directly about what it is that they're wanting to see from us. And then we've started to work with them and do particular specific projects based on what we heard from them. And we have scheduled out with all of our schools now till February to do a mid-year check. How are things going? What are you enjoying from our interactions? What can we be doing more of? Do you want to see us in schools more? I feel strongly that I want to be in schools and supporting my admin as much as possible without making them feel like I'm on their backs or observing them. That if I'm there and I'm welcome to be there, then I'll be there. If it's something that they don't want until they're ready to call me, by all means. But yeah, we scheduled those out with all of our schools. I'm really looking forward to hearing from them and understanding what they want from my team in the next 6 months. Beyond that, we've been doing 24 affinity groups a month. So that's currently 20 hours a week. Ethan and I are spending in schools on just affinity groups. That's just one-on-one time with students. And our engagement in affinity spaces is growing. And we certainly could not do that without buy-in from our administrators. We're doing that at our high school levels and primarily our middle school levels. And I've been really touched and impressed by the administrators' willingness and interest to engage with us and support us in any way they can. And so with that in mind, I just wanted to give a little bit of in-depth info about what affinity spaces are. The purpose, right, is so that our students who are experiencing bias or who might belong to a protected class or are marginalized students within our district are getting a special space where they feel able to come together and build community, which absolutely ticks some of our strategic plan goals around building support for those students who might not otherwise be getting an opportunity to engage with their peers in a authentic way. And again, that purpose is for them to have connection and they feel a stronger sense of belonging within their school, which has been clear based on their seeing that their schools and administrators are willing to provide that space for them. Naturally, I think builds a sense of belonging for those students, that they see that their principals and teachers are engaged and willing to provide that time and space, has made a difference. It was no surprise to us that we were seeing the majority of our bias incidents at our middle school level, which is based on where kiddos are at in their development, who they're becoming as kiddos and what they're mirroring from their peers. And so for that reason, we're spending the majority of our time in our middle schools, applying pressure where we're needing to. And that has certainly impacted our kiddos positively. And for that reason, we wanted to share a little bit of what's going well for our kids, some street data from them. So our students are reporting that they're excited about those spaces. They're grateful for a new place to express themselves and share solidarity that they didn't have before. They're also reporting an increased sense that bias language is being taken more seriously this year, and that it's slowly decreasing due to improved responses from staff compared to previous years. We're seeing attendance in affinity spaces grow. They're excited, they're popping their heads in, they're asking when we're gonna be back. They're running out to get their friend from a playground to come in, and they're asking for different snacks next time. I got a request for multiple types of Mexican candy today. I had to write them down because I didn't know every single one. We're also seeing students express that they're more comfortable in their spaces, and they're also engaging with us about other ways that we can ask their principals to make their school space feel safe for them. We have ideas around like poetry and murals and opportunities to engage and speak on their cultural identity at assemblies, that type of thing, which is really exciting to see. And then again, I stated this before, but just a lot of gratitude for the administrators who are doing everything that they can to support Ethan and I in those spaces, making announcements, inviting us to come at lunchtime to speak to students so they know where those spaces are, and introducing ourselves, putting up posters, et cetera. So that has really made a difference for us in our ability to engage with kids. And then moving forward, I think another thing that we're wanting, well, something I know we're wanting to do, which we hope will have a positive impact on bias, is communicating effectively to families and community around what's happening in their student schools, concrete numbers at each space so that they understand what their kiddos, like what's happening at that community, and providing clarity around ways that they can advocate for their student, as well as resources to talk to their students about bias, whether their kids are experiencing themselves or their kids are watching it happen to other folks, or maybe even causing harm themselves unintentionally, right? We know that students learn best from their home environment. That's their number one teacher, right? So I don't expect families to know how to have all of those challenging conversations without support. So we're working on resources to send home to parents. And then more information around the anecdotes that we're providing for bias response and belonging for students. So affinity spaces, increased bias response protocols, et cetera, all with the goal of building and maintaining healthy community and school settings. So, questions?
I have to. So can you tell me how many times a student can make a racial slur against another student before that student is removed from that environment?
So I don't have my bias protocol in front of me, but we have it based on levels, and it differs with each situation. However, I will say that there have been multiple suspensions, in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and I believe strongly that admin and the district aren't unwilling to take it to expulsion if our means of investigating and dealing with the situation aren't working, like some of the examples I gave. I don't necessarily have a number there myself, as the discipline piece isn't my bread and butter, but tagging
So
you
you
in.
saw on the data the last time Kelsey presented, I think there were 4 reoffending. So those are easily tracked. And if we were to see that, and I think you had built in the rubric itself what happened second and a third time when we would get there.
At a level 3, if it's like 1, 2, if you continue to say it blatantly to a student, right, versus like in passing, and you're not responding to the conversations or the suspensions, that we would then inform that student, hey, we've tried this, you're refusing to accept that this is an appropriate way to treat your peers, and this is what we're looking at, and communicating to families as well that, hey, your student has been offered all of these opportunities to learn and grow, and this is where we're headed if it's not corrected. Does that answer your question?
I think the answer is the 4th time.
I would say second, third, but we haven't had to get to that point
time?
so far.
It depends what we want to remove. You're suspending them on a first offense, so they're
Yes,
temporarily removed immediately. You're
Yes.
talking about permanently removed after multiple incidents, though, maybe. I'm not sure.
yeah, that's a great,
Guess what you're asking, but I'm hearing suspension on the first blatant offense.
yes,
Thank you.
yeah.
Kelsey, are you getting a true sense that we're getting a handle on this and we're starting to have some true reduction across the district? I mean, mainly in middle schools, right, because that's where you're spending most of your time, and that's kind of the nature of the beast in those schools, but.
Yeah, I think that, I think what I'm seeing at this point, we're still in this, we still have admin and teachers learning how to handle the situations. We're still learning how to track appropriately every time. I would say that we're on our way to having a better understanding of everything that's happening. I think that we will likely uncover more situations the more we're engaging with students. But my goal would be that everyone who's experiencing harm feels supported, and that teachers have a clear path to handling the situation, and that, as we were just discussing with Roger, that we have or policies in place or paths in place so that students know that the behavior isn't appropriate and won't be tolerated, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kelsey, Ethan, I really appreciate the work you're putting into this and the direction you're heading, and I think we all will benefit from your work. So thank you, both of you, for what you're doing. Appreciate
Thank
it
you.
very
Nice
much.
job, Ethan. Moving in the right direction.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Any other questions, gentlemen?
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have new business, Mr. Bolin, Community Eligibility Program.
So I first want to start with this. I want to apologize to the board for making this the last addition to the agenda for our meeting today. So this was an opportunity I didn't think that we could delay, but it came, although our department tried to provide some information to you, it's very, unless you are immersed in this on a daily basis, it's very tough to understand. So I have just a couple slides to help explain this a little bit further. So this is a special opportunity, a different change in process from ODE that came eligible to us. But last spring, the board approved the CEP qualifications for our district last spring. So in November, ODE received a waiver to include a different set of data into that formula, which made us eligible to a greater degree, and I'm going to explain that in a second. We attended and received some instructions on December 7th, and our application was due the 31st, and we actually didn't receive notification until the first week back after break. So this was timely for us, but I think a positive for our district, so we wanted to move it forward. But I apologize that this was a different procedure than you guys have experienced before. So to explain this in brief, to go through the 6 pages that I believe you received in your packet to give a brief overview. So when we applied for CEP, we had 18 schools that we put into a pool. And in that pool, the result of the threshold, it's called Identified Eligible Students, ISP. So in that number, you're trying to reach 40% of the qualifications. All the factors that go into that qualification are generated at the state level, not at the local level. That's a number that we get. So we throw 18 schools into that pool, and we hope that number gets above 40%. And last spring, when we threw in West Albany High School and Oak Grove, it dropped that number below 40%. So we had to pull them out of the pool. So now this year, with the waiver from the federal government and from the state, they added the Medicaid data into the formula. That bumped West Albany High School and Oak Grove. When we put all 20 of our schools into that pool, we now were above that 40% number. So now all schools are eligible to be reimbursed at 90% rate for meals. So this is a great opportunity for our district. So the other part of the calculation is this. So that number for us now is 44.38% of our ISP number. That's multiplied by 1.6. The federal government reimburses us by 71%, at 71%. So the state also reimburses us up to the 90% threshold. So they make up the difference. The state makes up the difference. So what we're responsible for is the remaining 10% of our district. So unless you live and breathe this on a daily basis, this can be hard to understand, but this is the simplest way I know to explain it. And I've been coached well by Scott and Tara in the nutrition department, working with them over the last couple of days to do this. So to put this in actuality, my first question to Tara when we were talking about this and the possibility of this right before break was, what was the additional cost to the district and to the food service program? So this is just a brief example of the cost that I went through. So an example at lunches and this is how you apply the formula a little bit for the explanation. On average, about 1,700 meals or lunches we serve at West Albany Lunch each month. We charge for those lunches $3.60. The rate is charged, and then our reimbursement rate for that meal is 40% from the government. That's basically $4 a meal that we're reimbursed at. So between the paid and the reimbursement rates, it's about $6,800. So now you take that same 1,700 meals and you put it in a 90-10 model. 1,530 of them at the 90% rate, we were reimbursed at that rate at $4.25, which is about $6,500. And 107 of them would fall into that 10% category in the new calculation at 40%, at 40 cents, and that'd be about $68. So in essence, the cost difference to the district is about roughly $230 a month, so and about $10 to $15 a day at West. So for really a low expense, we're able to say in our district, we serve all of our students free lunch, free breakfast at a very, so all of our schools are free for breakfast and lunch. So that's kind of in essence what's happening here. This is a four-year approval. Each year, annually, you have an opportunity to change and make adjustments to this pool by application to the state. So we're not locked in for 4 years. We look at this every year moving forward.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the information in the presentation. So is the action item then to approve the community eligibility program as presented?
Yes.
I move to do just that.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? M2, Mr. Boland, you're still up. Purchase approval for Bar Green Ellingson.
Part of the National School Lunch Program, we have an obligation to limit our net cash resources in our program, that they cannot exceed 3 months of an average expenditures. We exceeded that last year. And so this plan, we have a plan in place to reduce that by about $358,000. One vendor has expenses that are over $150,000, so by policy, that needs to come to the board, so we need approval for the single vendor expenditure. And all of these items will greatly enhance and allow us to have a better product into our schools.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the purchase of the items as presented in the document. Looks like good equipment at fair value for the district.
It doesn't require any kind of bidding or anything, just to make sure.
It went through 3 bids.
Oh, it did, okay.
I'll second.
Discussion? I had a quick question. Is this in the budget, part of our budgeting? So it's not going to affect our budgeting way, it's already accounted for?
Is use of surplus.
It's all in the food service fund, the 295 fund.
Excellent. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to recognize as well Scott for his work in food service and his industry to make sure that I'm not sure whether he's awake at this time to note that, but he has done a great job with the program and a lot of initiative with new equipment, those kind of things.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I believe that is everything.
Real
If I
quick,
could-
real quick.
Oh, we
I
have
know
one
Roger
more?
wants to get out of here. But I just want to make sure, in K1, that GASB 54 resolution, you don't need a resolution from us, actually? We didn't do that. We don't need one?
Did we miss something? K1 you said.
You're looking at me funny, but it
I
says right
missed your
there.
question.
So it says under K1, it says GASB 54 resolution, and it reads like a resolution Brad's supposed to sign. But we didn't
Yes.
talk about it, and we didn't vote on it.
We can move that to next month with the audit report, or it is a resolution. Normally, it's part of the budget, and it was something I didn't do at the budget time. It just establishes those fund balances to the priority of expenditure level. Like the 200 fund is grant funds, they're
Yeah, well, it
restricted.
looked cut and dry, I just didn't know if you needed us to do it before we left or not. Yeah, because I'll just move that we approve it.
Yes, that'd be great.
I move that we approve the GASB 54 resolution.
I would second the motion.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Now how about a motion?
One more thing.
Oh.
It's going to be real quick.
Okay.
We keep, no, I'm sorry, but
That's
we
okay.
keep hearing about the ESD, the synergy problems.
Yeah.
Would it do any good, like, so when our district has issues, we're the board, our constituents talk to us. Do the
Yeah.
board members of the ESD know that there's frustration out there? And would it do like me any good to call whoever my ESD board member is and say, this is not acceptable, we need this data, or this has got to get fixed, or?
So we are working on that. I've been in contact tonight with I've been in contact tonight with 2 other superintendents, and we're working on
Okay.
another meeting to
It doesn't help
address
to
that
do anything
with
at the
them.
board level, board to board, with the ESD board yet?
I think that we need to understand the technical issues. We're relying on a couple of older programs that are supposed to provide us some service this year that pre-existed, Swiss being one of them.
Okay.
And so we're trying to understand, and we're going to get meetings to go, why can't we see that data?
Okay.
And Stafford and John have shared that with me as well. It looks a little different in some of these other districts. We're trying to figure out what is the common thread right now.
Gotcha. Okay,
So-
thanks.
And-
I move we adjourn.
And one more item before, Frank Bricker passed away, and I thought it'd be appropriate to say some words. He spent many years with the district, and as a board member, he worked for ESD. Hans, thank you. You wrote a very great article. I talked to you by the way, and we really appreciate that and his contribution to our community. And so he will be missed, and he gave a lot to our school district and our community, and we thank him for that.
Definitely.
Okay,
I move we adjourn.
I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.